Deep Fried Thoughts, it's the best podcast. Deep Fried Thoughts. Don't worry, we're working on a better intro. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's good to have you.
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't snowing too much today.
No, it seems like there's ice and snow every time I come here, though.
Yeah.
So,
dude, it's so funny. I was driving on I was going into work, and I was so excited that it was snowing because I have the Quigley 4x4 van, and I almost never get to use it or have any excuse of why I bought it. And it's nice to be 4x4 with the van and like flying around corners and kind of drifting a little bit when nobody's on the road. I had a good time going into work. Coming back is a little different, but anyway, dude, I got hit the other day.
Did you?
Actually, it was at a 5-way intersection, but it's like this weird thing where it's 5 turning into 4. So that means 2 of them come in and they have their own stop sign where you're supposed to go like every other and be polite, and then you make it up to the 4-way intersection. So I pull up and it's me in this little car, and car goes and then it's me in the little car. So it's my turn. I start pulling forward. As soon as I pull forward, this car just runs in and hits the side of the van, and I'm jolted over a little bit. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I'm so bummed. I just got this thing all fixed and and where I want it for the time being. And this person's not moving. They're just they hit me. And now we're blocking the intersection. People are trying to get by. They're honking. And I'm like, why is this person not moving? Or like backing up. So I put my window down and I'm yelling, back up, just back up so I can move. Dude, then I start hearing the crunching. And I'm seeing, and this is like, it's getting dark. They start driving forward. So they hit me at an angle from the back, like on the side of the van. And they just drove forward through it. And I just hear crying. I'm like, oh, no. I'm screaming out the window. So they pull over, and it's this like little old lady. She has no idea what's going on, no idea where she is. And I'm thinking this van's it's got to be like a wrecked on the side, like from what I heard.
Yeah.
I get out, and there was nothing. Not a single thing. And then I couldn't figure it out because her car had so much damage along the front end and everything. And I realized she hit the hinge from where the side doors swing open. She hit the hinge and did nothing. Just totaled the front end of her car, like a bunch of panels. But I was pretty happy. The beast lives on.
Yeah, happy it's not yours.
Yeah, right?
Oh, man, that sucks, though.
Yeah. It's all good. Could be worse.
Yeah.
I'm taking her camping, actually. I'm taking Thatcher to D.C.
Okay.
on the 20th, not the 6th.
I thought you meant you were taking the lady camping. I was like, you got to know her that well?
No, I don't ever want to see that lady again. She's like, I don't even know where I'm at. And I was like, well, you're on the side of the road. I was like, I didn't know what she really meant by that. Like, are you aware, like, we got in an accident? She had no idea what was going on. She's like, I thought you were letting me go. I wanted to say, like, when I was past you? Like, anyway, whatever. That's old people. We're all going to get there, hopefully, or maybe not. No. Do you want to get old?
I think I do. I mean, I don't want to be old, but I want to, have a life worthy of being old, if that makes sense. Like go through the whole lifespan. Like, I think, everybody when they're young, they don't want to do that. They're like, I'll be dead by the time I'm 27. And then you hit 27 and you're like, oh, I still got more stuff I want to do. So yeah,
right. That age just keeps moving up.
Yeah, I'm creeping up on 30 now, so I'm ready to keep going. I think like you get a better perspective of what life is by this time.
I'd like to go as long as I can, as far as I'm taking care of as long as I'm taking care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not taking care of myself, like on a serious level, I just want to go. I'm probably not gonna tell anybody. I'll just take a long nap.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like. And all respect to him, but like Jimmy Carter being 101 or whatever it was, and it's just like, I don't want to be that.
I don't want to be that
but
at all.
Like, as long as my brain's intact, I would love to be around, I feel like.
Even if you're being carted around?
Define carted around.
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, not that. not that, no.
But I feel like his brain was still there.
I don't know. Maybe. I hope so. I don't know. Or do I? Maybe it's better to not be aware of what you're going through at that point.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyway.
This is coming out of left field. We didn't talk about this at the time. I'm just curious.
Okay.
Have you listened to the telepathy tapes?
No. What is that?
Okay. I was scrolling through Reels, and I heard some other podcasts I was listening to do a lot of conspiracy ask that same question. And, of course, I was like, I don't even want to listen anymore. I got to go check this out after, like, hearing a few seconds of it. So it basically is like this I'm going to botch a lot of this, but you can go look it up yourself. This doctor had done a lot of research, a psychiatrist, and on nonverbal autistic children and teaching them this new way of of communicating using letters. I think it has like a board and you point and you could spell things out and they can communicate. Now, this is kind of like a Helen Keller situation. As far as I know, just from listening to this podcast, we thought these people were full on retarded, like nothing going on in there. Like, yeah, they might be really smart at these few things, but there's nothing else going on other than that. Like these people are at all different levels. They either have like a great skill or they've got nothing. Like we thought, no hope, not trying to communicate. I didn't realize how little there is to do for a child like that. I thought they, anyway. So this woman started to find out, if you believe it, that these people are not only, so she taught them how to speak. So once they started speaking, find out like, they're highly intelligent. They know everything that's going on. And they also are describing something that sounds like telepathy and talking about how they all talk to one another. They can hear thoughts. And they started running tests. So basically this lady did a bunch of research and some other woman had discovered it and was like, this can't be real. So the podcast is hers and she's going out. She talks to the doctor. There's a lot of shady stuff about that doctor if you look up online, but this woman's like, I'm going to see if this is true or not. So she goes out all around the world, finding these people that the doctor had worked with and testing them. And they came up with, it was like 96% accurate. And then the other 4%, was corrected by the autistic child immediately. And the test was having the child in one area or like behind, on one side of a curtain, and then a mother or someone that they claimed to be able to read the mind of on the other side, and they would show them cards out of a deck or Uno cards. And they said immediately upon the mother, in the one case it was the mother, seeing the card, the child would immediately start communicating what that card was. And it was something like, it was like an insane, like hundreds of millions to one of getting like 34% correct. And this person got 96% correct and then corrected themselves to get 100%. And they were doing it. Apparently there's video online. It's behind a $10 paywall. Anyway, it gets crazy. I was like full on believing, or I'm like, now I'm teetering on the edge of it, on whether or not autistic people have telepathy. And they also talk about a group chat where they all talk and commune from all around the world. And I'm like, what am I listening to? So anyway, this leads up to today. I'm working and I'm delivering something to this house, and there's a nonverbal autistic kid, and he's in the basement, like full-grown man, looks like a kid playing with Legos. And he's just going to town with it, and he's got all these train sets. And I was like, I'm going to find out right now. So I kept thinking like, positive thoughts of like, hey, I'm literally trying to communicate this person through my thoughts as I'm walking back and forth deliveries. I'm sounding so retarded talking about this out loud. I feel so stupid admitting this. And I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And so I start, saying, hi, my name is this and that. He's not responding. So I was like, this little shit. I was like, I know you can hear me. So I said, I'm going to break your train sets. I'm going to smash them when I walk by. No response. So anyway, I'm telling Jenny, I was like, this is how dumb I am. This is what I just tried to do. She gets so mad at me for the thoughts that I had. And I immediately thought, well, then you must believe this is true. So she's actually the real crazy one. But anyway, I think it's great. I want more people to listen and find out like, hey, Carmen, this is actually what this is about. And please prove to me that they're not all so gifted that they're talking to each other from across the world in a group chat of their minds and reading our thoughts. And calling us muggles, apparently. Apparently that's like a joke amongst them that we're the muggles. Right? This is like craziness.
Oh my God.
Anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if I have any.
That's a lot to throw at somebody.
Yeah, that was not the way I expected this to start.
No.
Hi guys. How are you? My gut instinct is that it's not remotely real at all, because how could it be? I feel like I've there's a common like meme or conspiracy theory, if you will. I think some people take it seriously. Others just like to joke about it, about Helen Keller and her doctor that interacted with her making all of that stuff up too.
I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot more plausible belief, is that people are just making all of it up for attention. Especially in the case of like Helen Keller, how all of a sudden now this little girl has all the beliefs of this frustrated political activist. I'm more prone to believe that everything's fake.
Yeah, finding that out made me curious. Finding out that she then became an author of multiple books.
Yeah.
And that that her handler, if you want to call it, I don't know what the proper term was, was a failed author trying to write similar books. And I was like, okay, I don't believe this.
It's fishy. I'm not saying I believe that either, but I'm more likely to believe that than a group chat of telepathy. I don't.
All right, you're a skeptic. I get it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm still reeling from the beginning of this. All right.
It's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah.
And if there wasn't video and like other things, like I know somebody who bought the video and saw it, and they're like, "Dude, this is real." And I was like, I was really hoping that person would reach out to me and be like, "Absolutely not. It's all BS."
Yeah.
But now I'm still confused about the world and everything that I thought I knew.
Yeah, I mean, the more you know, the less you know. I think that's a good way to look at life. So sure, I'll be a skeptic about everything, but I like admitting that I don't know how anything works too. That's fun. I mean, there's more mystery, there's more romance in the world if you look at it that way. So maybe there is a group chat in the sky. Yeah. Well, add me. I'm curious.
Yeah. No, I thought that was interesting. The podcast definitely went off the rails a little bit at the end, but anyway. So I think last time you were here, we were talking about the softening, right?
Yeah, and it was had we even talked about it being in festivals or anything yet? How long ago was that?
Let's pretend we didn't. Let's
if we repeat ourselves, which we probably will, especially me, I'm sorry, but it's still entertaining. So yeah, I don't know. I mentioned this to you right before we went on that like I feel a little bit guilty with how much I talked about this movie leading up to it because nobody could see it for years. Like I announced it back in 21, I think, was when I first was like, all right, I'm making a movie. And it wasn't until the very end of 24, it just went up on Amazon Prime and another streaming service called Fossum, which I don't know if you'd ever heard of that before. I hadn't.
No.
It's a lot like Tubi from what I get from it. It's free to watch anything. There's just ads and stuff. So you can stream it on either one. But yeah, went through the standard protocol of going through festivals and stuff, which was a lot of fun. It's very nerve-wracking. I mean, I think whenever anybody does something artistic, they're always like, it's my baby. It's like, I'm worried about how people are going to react to it. And to a degree, that's true. I also feel like it's not my baby. It's me. It's literally me. So I'm just like putting myself in front of people and going, judge this, please. And so when you get responses from people, it's very hard to receive that sometimes, even if it's good, because you're like, I don't necessarily believe you that you like this. And so, especially also in the negative stuff, having contradictory information, they say when you submit to festivals and you get rejected, don't contact them at all. Like, don't ask why you got rejected, because that's just, you don't want to do that. It makes you look desperate or whatever. But I was stupid, and so I did. And I would email festivals just going like, can I get some constructive criticism? Just want to know why. And all of them ignored me except for one. So shout out to Philadelphia Unnamed Film Festival was the one to actually respond. And there was some interesting information in their response. They had 3 different judges watch it and give some basic reviews and notes on it. And what I learned is the notes are kind of useless to you because it's all subjective. Because I had one person say the movie was too predictable. I'm like, really? Because most people that watch it go like, I had no idea what was going on the whole time.
Yeah, it would be the last thing I think I'd expected.
Yeah, frankly. And, you know, when I had actually first sent the script to my brother just to get his notes on it, he was like, you don't explain anything, you need to go back. So I actually went back in and explained some stuff in the script, but even so, barely anything is explained, at least obviously. And then the other judge came back and said that nothing ever made sense. So I'm like, this movie is both too predictable and doesn't make sense. Those are contradictory notes. So I kind of learned, like, if people don't like it, or if they do like it, that's just their opinion. You kind of have to leave it at that. You're not really getting any real information out of people. And on top of that, if people love it, I've gotten a lot of compliments from people at festivals too. I had this old man at the Allentown Film Festival tell me that he thought he was watching a Hitchcock film. I'm like, you can't take that seriously either, because it's a great compliment, but it's like, that's not helpful information. You know, that doesn't do anything for me. So both good and bad information, you just have to let it go.
Yeah.
You know? So
I can't believe it was that long ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was COVID or what, but it's hard to use that excuse now. We're a couple years out, but time is just flying by. I think it's our age.
It is, yeah. I think it's just the amount of stuff you do, and the repetitive stuff. Not to get totally sidetracked here, but like the more you do the same thing every day, your brain only can like collect a certain amount of memories. So if you do the same thing every day, it just goes like, oh, same memory and rejects it.
Dude, it's so weird. I was just talking about this with somebody. I was with a couple buddies on New Year's Eve, and I was like, hey, anybody, because we're all with kids doing the same. I've like all of our lives probably look very similar at this point. And I was like, hey guys, do you ever have that moment at the end of the night, like right before you go to bed, where you're like, you kind of just blank out and you're like, I've been doing this every day for a while, and you just everything runs into itself, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm on a Groundhog Day cycle.
Yeah,
I got to break it up.
Yeah,
and they all said yes. I'm like, all right, but it's a weird feeling. It feels like you're in fast forward, like Click.
Yeah,
I don't know how you feel about Adam Sandler movies. Have we ever talked about this before?
Probably not, but it's funny because we just talked about Spaceman a little bit the other day because, and then in my review of that, I was talking where I was like, I don't like Adam Sandler movies typically. Very few of them I enjoy, but I was like, this one worked for me. So I do like some, but that's definitely not usual for me.
The one where he played, it was like Jack and Jill or something.
Yeah.
I think that one and Hubby Halloween, one of the Netflix ones, are the only ones I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I don't like this. Every other one, as stupid as they could be, I don't know what it is. I love it. I love all of them.
I think Adam Sandler, for me, he works best as a side character, which he almost never is. But there was a movie back before he was like famous. I think he was on SNL still, but he wasn't like famous yet, called Mixed Nuts. It's a Steve Martin Christmas movie. Dark comedy, very like mean humor. It's not very popular. I think it's got like 5 on IMDb or something. But I love it because it's just like mean-spirited Christmas comedy. It's just like, I don't know. It's like the premise of it is that Steve Martin's working at a suicide hotline during the holidays. Like, it's not happy. But in that, Adam Sandler plays the annoying neighbor in like the apartment building. I'm like, that's what he's perfect for. Yeah. He needs like 5-10 minutes of screen time. He shouldn't be the main character. He should just be the annoying guy over there. Perfect for that.
Yeah, I don't know how he's got some of his movies made. Like, I'll watch and like, how did he like pitch this?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I only brought that up because of Click. Yeah. Click is a movie I was like, oh, this is a fun, like family movie. But man, I watched it fairly recently, like within the past few months. And dude, it just like, it was such a deeper movie than I think I gave it credit for when I watched it.
Same writer as Bruce Almighty, by the way.
Was it?
Yeah, the same writer wrote that and also 1,000 Words with Eddie Murphy, which I don't know if you've seen that.
No.
It's not very popular, but each one is the same basic idea of like a regular dude gets given some sort of power or ability, becomes God, has this remote that can control the world. Or in the case of 1,000 Words, it's a little bit backwards because he's actually limited. He's a fast-talking lawyer who now will die if he goes over 1,000 words. So he's only got 1,000 words for the rest of his life. And that's Eddie Murphy. So it's like fast-talking comedian kind of guy. And each one is just like really funny at times, but then really poignant by the end. And I'm a sucker for that formula. So yeah, Click isn't my favorite comedy in the world because it's still the Adam Sandler stuff. But as far as Adam Sandler movies go, I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. And for those of you that are curious, which is probably none of you, we did meet here tonight on the 7th at 7.
Oh, we did.
And if you know, you know.
Yeah.
That's it. Anyway, yeah, Adam Sandler movies. But the film festivals, how many did you put into?
Oh, how many did I get into or how many did I submit to? Because I submitted to probably... I don't know if you want to
share all both.
Yeah, I did talk about this briefly on the YouTube channel. YouTube.com/SimonsRants. I submitted to probably between 30 and 40. I forget the exact number. And I got into about, I want to say 6 or 8. I forget the exact amount, which is a pretty normal like submission to acceptance rate. Mm-hmm. You should only expect to get into like 2 out of every 10. That's typically how it goes. So that was pretty much right on pace with what I was expecting. But still, even within that, I didn't get into ones I was confident I was going to get into, and then I got into ones I thought there was no chance I was going to get into. So it was really, once again, a good lesson on just kind of like letting go of expectation and reaction when certain people say they like it versus when other people don't. Mm-hmm. You kind of just have to remove any and all expectation and just let people do with it what they will. Because I was really confident I was going to get into one of the local festivals, and the only local one I got into was Allentown, which was cool, and I'm glad I got into it. It was a great festival. But then I was like, "There's no way I'm getting into the Austin festival," and then we got in there, and that was really cool. I was not only did we get into it, we won multiple awards, including Best in Show. So I was like, I don't even think I'm gonna get into this one, and then we walked away with awards. So yeah, just try to remove any sort of expectation is the best way to look at it.
Yeah. So you're talking about the awards at the Austin show. How did that go overall with all of them?
Yeah, so there was a couple of different things. So at Austin, we won Best in Show, we won Best Actor and Best Actress. It was actually cool. We got a lot of nominations on top of that too that we didn't win, but both.
Which one wasn't it something about the cast? What was the cast one?
Oh, that was a separate. So that was the Indie Fest where we won Ensemble Cast, or didn't win Ensemble Cast, but
Ensemble cast.
award-winning actor right there. Yes, I say that all the time to like Connor and Eric too, because like award-winning actor. Yeah, so that festival's a little bit different because it's not like everybody gets a trophy, but it's more of a ranking system. So it's like we got the Award of Merit, which is like on par with like getting like a B plus or maybe a B minus or something. So they're saying like you did a pretty good job. That's what Award of Merit means. But back to the Austin one, both actresses got nominated, which I thought was really cool.
That's awesome,
both Devin and Jess, they were both deserved it. Both were crazy talented, both a joy to work with. So I was happy that both of them got recognition. You're just sitting there though, going like, I hate that only one of them can win this because they both should get it. So yeah, it was like being a proud parent, but you know, watching them fight against each other. Not literally, but it was hard, that part. And then Allentown, we won Best Actor again. And that's pretty much it, I think, as far as awards go. It's funny, I've talked about this. So I was the main character. I played Ted in the film. And so, you know, the ensemble cast plus 2 Best Actor awards. And it's like, you'd think I would be happy about that because that's for me. But like, I'm going into filmmaking as a writer first, a director second, actor 20th on my list of priorities. So I feel like I'm getting the wrong award. I'm like, I don't want this. I want the other thing. But it is what it is. Once again, you take the compliments, you say thank you, and then you move on.
So writing is actually where your biggest interest is. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, writing, directing, 1A, 1B.
Okay.
But I think writing is something I'm most passionate about. Like, if I switched from making movies to books, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I prefer the film medium over literature, but I do enjoy writing a lot. Some of my biggest inspirations as a kid growing up were graphic novels that was like, I love the visuals and I love the story here. This would make a great movie kind of thing. But yeah, writing first, but barely.
That's cool. Did you write as a kid?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Oh, were you doing more like stories or like movie, like something like for the screen?
Oh, everything I wrote up until late middle school was novels. It didn't become screenplays until or like I was working like doing drama with church or whatever. I did stuff with the Boy Scouts where I was writing sketches, and then YouTube doing skit comedy and stuff. So it was novels until I was literally writing for something that I was going to do. So it was always like novels because what else would I do? And then, they're asking me to put on a show. How do I write this differently? So I had to learn how to write like a script, which is very different than writing a book. It's a completely different style of writing. But yeah, I wrote books as long as I can remember. I was writing something. Yeah.
That's cool. I haven't in a long time. I loved writing stories, especially like really in depth. I loved like, for me, it was always like the characters first. I'd find a character that I really liked in my head. You know, I'd toy around and think about him for a while, and then I would, you know, maybe give him a friend and, you know, somebody who's, you know, the opposite of that, not necessarily enemy, but, and then I kind of piece it together and then start writing. And I did that a bunch of times. And I remember the one time, so I had my friend Ali, he had written a bunch of scripts, you know, went out to Hollywood, worked with some people. Lee Daniels was one of them. But at that time I had read, I would read all of his stuff. And the writing style was so different, and it was so hard for me to comprehend. Like reading it was fine; it made sense. Like the way you were setting up the scene, and then you read the dialogue. But dude, writing that was just so foreign to me. I felt like
Yeah.
there's no correlation, or my brain just couldn't jump to it. Even for just writing like because talking with him a lot, he would encourage me to this one short film I wanted to do, to just write a script for it. But I wrote it out, and he's like, no, dude, you wrote a short story. He's
Yeah.
like, you had and trying to do it differently. I was like, this makes no sense to me. I can't I can't visualize it. So it's interesting that you enjoy both, or we were able to transition to that. Was it a lot of a learning curve?
I think so. I think honestly also before even writing, like I don't know when I first started writing, but I was making videos also as a kid. And typically I wasn't writing scripts for those. I was just filming whatever, like just a stream of consciousness. But so I think I started writing books at a certain point, excuse me, because it was stories I wanted to tell that were too big for what I was able to film. Like I remember falling in love with the story of like the Three Musketeers and being like, I want to do this fantasy novel like that or whatever, sword fighting, whatever, castles, stuff like that. And it's like I can't film that. So you start writing books, and I don't know. It wasn't really ever about the style of writing. It was just I want to tell a story no matter how that I can. So if there was a way for me to film that, I would have. But it was just like I need to put this somewhere because I have this story that needs to be told. So as far as switching writing styles, it didn't really bother me because it was just like it was a means to an end. I just need this story, so tell me how to do it and I'll do it. I'll figure out the rest. You know, yeah.
Yeah, it's fun learning new things, especially if you're interested in it and keep it going.
Yeah.
And then to see it wasn't just like something you did as a kid; you're actually doing it now. It's
Yeah,
like, do you look back at that as like, man, like what would this kid think right now? Like I'm doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that was probably the harder transition is going to adulthood and not giving up on that, which I mean, frankly, I did. You get all these ideas when you're going to college of like, all right, now time to grow up. What am I doing with my life? Where do I go from here? And so there was a gap there of 7 years or something where I wasn't pursuing anything artistic at all, really. And I'm so glad I fell back into it, because it's so important to me, and it doesn't have to be something that was just a fantasy as a kid. And I talked about this recently on my channel too, where I was just like, I get brought to tears sometimes watching those old videos where it's me just because when the stories first started, I'm the youngest of a large family. I have 5 older siblings, and they were making videos all the time. Like my dad in the mid to late 90s had bought like an old camcorder with like tapes you would put in and record and stuff. And so, which by the way, back then was expensive. That was thousands of dollars to get a camera back then. And I think the first one we ever made, like a scripted story, was like my dad got all the kids together and we like made a story for our mom for Mother's Day or her birthday or something. And then that just started the ball rolling where then we just kept making other stories. And so for me as a kid, it was always like, this is a family thing. Like, this is what we do. I want to be a part of it. This is fun. This is exciting. And then when older siblings moved out or got bored of it and stopped doing it, I was like, no, I want to keep doing this. This is what we do, And so it started out as like wanting to be included and it was just a fun thing to do with your older siblings. And so even now as an adult that none of my family's involved in anymore, I just feel like, man, this is fun. And something that I kind of learned in between the 2 movies I made was when I was making the first one, it was all about like, oh, I have to do this right. I have to get this down. I have to do this. I have to do that. And then the second was like, I get to do this. Like, this is fun. Like, I'm allowed to do this. It's like when I was first allowed to use my dad's camcorder without supervision. It wasn't like, oh, I have to film something. No, it was like, I get to. Oh my God, I get to. So, yeah, it's funny seeing how I grew up and rejected this childhood dream and then was like, all right, well, I can do it now, but it has to be this adult stiff version of it. And then I was like, no, it's the joy of being able to do it. That's why I want to do it. Sure, you want to make good art. and I'm always going to try to. But the reason for doing it isn't to make something good. It's to make something that you want. And that's so enjoyable once you remove the expectations.
That's awesome. You sort of answered one of the questions I was going to ask you, which was if you look back at some of that old stuff, because I think we talked about this last time. We also had a camcorder growing up, and I really wanted to make horror movies, and like my favorite thing was like learning how to go from this shot to that shot. Film on one side of the door while something's like listening or sniffing on the other side, like a monster. I loved that stuff, or adding audio in, or waiting for like a foggy night to go out and do like a scene like that we had been waiting like weeks for. And then I look back and I'm like, sometimes I wish I would have stuck with it. I'm like, man, I really loved that. And I remember thinking that and making some Instagram, and like, this was like back in Vine days, Instagram Vine shorts. And the reason I wanted to ask you is because, when we were talking about doing this, I had gone back and looked at all my old shorts, and it was like the cringiest thing. I was like, I hate every one of these. But I'm not going to take them down because it was where I was at in life, and it's kind of funny to look at how cringy and like stupid these things were. But it's like, man, like I kind of get some of these directors looking back at films I loved and critiquing them so harshly. It's like I know this is very different, but it's like something I thought like I put a lot of effort into, and I thought, wow, this is silly, but like I'm really putting effort into it and like trying to make it funny. And then you go back and you just like hate every bit of it. And I think some of that might be just hating kind of where you were, or that maybe that person you were at that time, because there is a little bit of that in there.
Absolutely,
there's a lot to it. Human beings are we're deep, if we want to be or admit it. But I was curious to hear how you liked that. But so that brought in like just like fond memories for you, because I didn't know that about you and your family doing that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of like a family tradition for me in a way, and so. And I don't want to, like, that's, like, trying to break it down to a deep psychological, like, therapist, like, why do you like film? I'm like, I don't know why I do. I just know that I do. But if I had to give a reason, it would be, making the movies with friends and then later, or family and then later friends. And then on top of that, like, having our weekly family night, we would mostly just watch movies because there's a wide range of siblings here. I'm 10 and a half years younger than my oldest brother. So what can you all do as a family that you all find entertaining? Usually just watching a movie. Like some games you can do, but there's very little that a 10-year-old is going to be interested in that a 20-year-old is going to be interested in. It's a hard combination. So, you watch movies and stuff. So to me, like movies is just a safe, like happy place to be. And even into adulthood, when you watch movies and they can either help you through tough times or change how you think about things. Like, we've probably talked about this before on one of the podcasts, but like the movie Her, for example, changed how I viewed relationships. It changed how I viewed life. On spoilers, because in that movie, which by the way, it's the year of that movie, we talked about that. Yep. The whole point of that movie is they're kind of equating people to programs and operating systems and how they update and they change and then become no longer compatible on whatever operating system they're on. And it's just like how people change and people grow. They're no longer compatible. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. It's just part of it. And so it's like just because something ended doesn't mean it was bad to begin with. And there's so many things that like I enjoyed watching that. It was really therapeutic watching that when going through like a breakup and you're like, oh, okay. This isn't all worthless now. These are good memories. People just change, things just change. So I love that movies can still be something so therapeutic and so, like I was saying, like a safe place. And just a joy to be involved in and making, calling back to like having all these memories that we just kind of throw away because it's the same thing every day. Filming is the opposite for me, where it's like I feel like everything in between making the two movies was a blur, but then making these two movies is just a glorious moment of like discovery and like doing something like, no matter how tough it was making the first movie, making the second movie was a breeze. It was easy, but making the first movie was hell at times. So much work, barely any sleep. I was sick for like the entire thing. I was driving home smiling every night because I was like, I'm doing it, dude. So not only is it a safe place for me to watch it and be covered by the blanket of a good story, but like making it just feels like, I don't know, it just feels like home too. So it's both sides of it. I love watching movies. I love making them. Everything about storytelling in general, I just think is a wonderful thing that only humans do, and I love that about it.
Well, I love being in them.
Yeah.
Not because of being on screen, but more so I love watching what's going on behind the scenes. I loved all of it. I had such a good time being there. Yeah, I've been thinking about it ever since. I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed seeing some old faces from the first movie, and meeting new people and talking even after with some of them. So it was cool. But all right, so you decide you're going to make a movie. I know we talked about some of this before, but just to run through, what did you think like, all right, I'm going to start writing some scripts, and you wrote the softening and thought, oh, I have to actually do this? Or were you like, hey, I actually need to make a movie. What can I make it about? Like, what came first?
So yes, it was kind of two different things happening simultaneously. So leading up to COVID, I had moved to Delaware, and I was doing Uber full time, and that gives you way too much time to think because all you're doing is driving around. Most people in Ubers don't want to talk. Yeah. Some do. I appreciated those people. But for the most part, you're just in silence, sitting in the same place all day, not interacting with anybody. So you just have a lot of time to think. So I'd sit there like, what can I make a movie about? Like, because I was a film critic at the time, still am. But I'm just thinking I always want to tell stories. And so I never really thought practically that I was going to film something, but I was like, if I was going to, what would it be? And it was actually a completely different story. I have a half-completed script of basically a taxi driver ripoff about a guy driving an Uber called Rideshare. And so I had this idea for a thriller to do with a guy that drove all the time, which I'm not going to give too many details on because I still like that story, may make it eventually. But so that was where the first seed of maybe I could make something, and then COVID happened. Never mind, I'm not going to make anything anytime soon. And then it was kind of things happening in my personal life that made me start wishing that there was a story that was written. For those of you who don't know, I have talked about this a little bit. I forget where, but frankly, actually, it may have been in festivals. This movie is strongly based off of elements of my grandfather's life. And so when he passed, and I was going I want a story about this. And there kept being movies that were coming out that I would hear the synopsis for. I was like, that sounds like it could be that. And then I'd watch it and it wasn't. And then it happened 3 times in a row. And I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm going to write the script. Not with any intention of actually making it, but just with what would I do with this concept, with this story? And the original concept was actually very different than what I ended up making because I wrote the script as if I didn't have any limitations as far as budget or anything or actors and stuff, locations. And so it was very different than, what I did do because once I found out I was going to make it, I had to change a lot. But yeah, it wasn't until I got into that car accident that I actually decided I was going to make the movie. I don't know if I've talked about that before or not.
Yeah.
But so I was no
longer. I
longer.
don't think so, at least.
Yeah, I was no longer Uber driving. I deliver for a pizza company, and I was stopped at a red light when a drunk driver hit me from behind. Didn't even know the light had changed. So he pinned me in between him and the car in front of us. Eventually, I signaled for us all to pull over to the side. He gets out. Beer everywhere. There's a puddle of beer literally in the car. And he's asking me what happened. And I'm like, what do you mean what happened? And he goes, did I hit you? I'm like, yeah, you did. And he's like, oh man, was the light red? I'm like, yeah, but his passenger gets out, has a pistol that you can clearly see. He's jacked up too. He's angry. It's my fault. So I just have to go into de-escalation mode. All right, dude, we're chilling. Everything's okay. Can I get your insurance, though, and your license, all of that? And he's like, yeah, I can't find it. I'm like, let me try and find it. And that's when I see all the beer. It's just everywhere in the car. Not that I couldn't already tell he was drunk, but, literally, the floor mat has, an inch-deep puddle of beer on it. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, the lady that was in front of me that I had hit because I got hit into her, she gets out and she's having balance problems and falling over and stuff. And the guy with the gun is freaking out, stop overreacting, stop making a scene. You're just trying to get insurance fraud. So once again, I'm trying to just be a mediator here. Everybody calm down. chill out. We're flying. Cops eventually show up. But they're from the wrong district because we're like right on a county line. So then new cops come eventually. I get sent off. Turns out my car is totaled. And I feel like a little bit woozy, but okay. So I asked to go home. I go home. It's either that night or the night after that. I forget which it is. I'm actually asleep in bed. I'm having a dream that I'm at a bar and just hanging out with a friend at a bar. And then all of a sudden, a car drives through the wall behind me and hits me. And I wake up with the worst headache, vertigo, just worst concussion symptoms of my life. It had taken just a couple days for some reason for the symptoms to catch up with me. Apparently that's a thing with like traumatic brain injuries that can happen. So I go to the doctor and I just have the worst concussion ever, but on top of that, like other symptoms too, where I can no longer focus my eyes on the same thing. They're like, that part of my brain has been eliminated. I no longer know how to focus on things. I cannot tell the difference between hot and cold. It's like I've got a flu. Like I'm sweating, but I'm too cold. I have no idea what's going on. Can't balance, can't sleep, have no regulation over my emotions, just a complete mess. So have to go to the doctors. This takes like a year of going to different doctors and stuff and physical therapy, retraining how to balance. Didn't know how to balance anymore. Didn't know how to focus my eyes. Like I said, had to relearn how to do that. Even till this day, I had to recreate new neural like pathways to do that. So I equate how I focus my eyes. It's not an automatic thing anymore. It's like when you remember that you have to breathe, and so you become on manual breathing. Mm-hmm. That's how my eyes are now. And I also equate it to, like, if you play Warcraft and you got Fog of War on, I have to, like, hit certain points with my eyes. Like, that's one of the exercises, following your finger around and stuff, or following different depths.
You're bringing up so many memories of past head injuries for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those
it's just
learning
like,
how to balance and stuff.
Yeah, it was terrible. Just awful. Yeah, it was really bad. And, like, yeah, I was not in a good place mentally because of that, and I just decided, like, I was so close to dying there because of that car crash. Why am I wasting my time not doing the things that I want to do? So that was the moment, and that was August of 21. That was the moment I decided to make the movie. So I already had, like, a first or second draft of the script at this point, so all I had to do was, like, polish the script up. I ended up doing over 7 drafts of it. Finish up the script, hire some people, and we were filming by March, I think it was. So it was less than a year later, like half a year later after that we filmed it. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So, sorry, long answer, but yeah.
No, it's a great answer.
Getting there was an interesting, life-altering choice, but I'm glad I made it.
Do you still have, like, tons of ideas constantly popping in?
Sure. I think at this point, so I have a note on my phone with about 100 movies I want to make. So very rarely do I have a new idea that I'm like, oh, that's a whole separate movie. Usually it's an idea to add to one of those ideas. But I still get like random cool ideas for a scene or something. I'm like, does that fit an idea I already have, or is that a whole separate thing? Like, I mean, it can be something really abstract. So it's like, that could fit a million different movies, or maybe that's something very specific. Excuse me. So, I mean, yeah, always new ideas, but you see if it can fit something you already have. Like, I forget where I got the piece of advice, but it was like, if you have ideas, try to make them work into something you already have. Don't make something new every time you have a new idea, because when you make something, you never know if it's going to be the last thing you make, because it's just hard and expensive to make art projects. So try and get as many ideas as you can into that one, because you may never make another one. So, yeah, I definitely have a lot of ideas, though, to go from here.
That's fun. Well, I hope you make them all. If you make every single one of them.
I doubt I'll live long enough to, but that would be great.
Now, sorry. So you decide you're gonna make it. You go to make it. You get your cast.
Yeah.
How did things go in the beginning? You said it sounded like it was pretty stressful. Were you enjoying it at all? In the moment of it?
Yes and no. I think like I enjoyed the fact that I was doing it. It was hard, and I would equate it to, like, I never really felt like satisfaction. It felt like relief when something would go right, because it's like, okay, finally, like, all right, we got this going. But there were still moments of joy mixed in there too. I would say like the filming was a lot of fun. The filming was everything else was stressful, but to talk about the casting process, that was interesting. I want to give a shout out to Devin because she was the first person that signed on, which was like a big domino piece to fall because like you're just sitting there going like, I think I've got a good idea. How do I convince people? And nobody else has signed on yet, so you're like, is this really dumb and I just don't know it yet? Yeah. So to have the first person say, this is a good idea, let's do this, really gave you that confidence boost to be like, all right, yeah, we are pursuing this. And then filling out the rest of the cast, and then Elemento, which was the production company I worked with, which is Logan and Mitch, having them sign on and saying, like, we want to film this, and we're willing to take a pay cut to film this because we're that passionate about this idea, was once again just like, this is great. Like, having votes of confidence from these people on, like, we want to be involved in this because we really like what we're seeing here. So, yeah, having just a few people to start that ball rolling really gave me the confidence to get going. And then at first, I was just reaching out to random people I was finding online. Eventually, I started using this website called Backstage, where you can set up a project and have people submit auditions. And so that helped having people submit and stuff. But even so, I feel like I got lucky because like I would get 100 auditions or whatever for a role, and only 1 or 2 would be good. And so you just had to pick the one good one and be like, I hope it works. Because, like, you look at, like, so Palmer and Max played the 2 cops, right? They were the only 2 guys to audition for that. And you just go, well, they're the 2. Let's see. And then you see them interacting. Like, automatically, these guys have so much chemistry. They're perfect together. I worked with them again. Both of them are in the second movie. I'm like, yeah, I want to keep working with these guys. I love them. They're great. But, like, those were the 2 choices. Like, I didn't have another option. It was, like, them or nobody. And Josephine, who played Rachel in the movie, she submitted her audition past the deadline. And I was, like, days away from hiring somebody else that I wasn't super confident in, but I was like, she's the best I got. I'm kind of waiting to see if anybody else is going to submit anything, but I'm probably going to hire this other girl. And then, like, the day before I was going to hire the other girl, Jess submits. I'm like, oh my God, it's her. You know, so it's like so many just happy accidents.
Does she know that?
I probably told her that. I don't remember if I did or not, but I was just like, the second she auditioned, I was like, yes, hired. Come on. Yeah, no. So it was just like so happy. The amount of talented people that I was able to get, both films, but especially this one where like everybody's like, well, who are you? Why do I care? At least on the second one, I had a little bit of something to fall back on and be like, look, I did this. This one was just people reading a script or an outline and being like, sure, why not? And then being like, how much am I getting paid? I'm like, nothing. Not literally, but like barely anything. You know, the movie was just, you know, bare bones project. We had 2 people on the crew, unheard of really, unless you count me. So it's like 2.5 because I'm acting in pretty much every scene. So it was just not a typical, even for this kind of like no budget movie, it's still not typical. We still did it wrong. But it just, I don't know. You get enough people that are all passionate about the vision together and are talented, extremely talented people. And we were able to make something that I'm actually really proud of.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did most people know this was like your first project?
Yeah.
And did you want them to know that?
No, I definitely didn't want them to know that. I'm not sure how many people knew at first. I definitely kind of hid some information. And it's like you do the old thing where you're sending out business emails saying, we want this, we want that, or whatever. And we're trying to do this. I'm like, I am by myself.
Dude, what is it about us like humans that do that? I do the same thing sometimes. Even when I'm talking here, I'm like, you know, we're going to do this. I'm like, no, it's me and me. Yeah. Talking to my wife about it. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But so I definitely did my best to try to see, and you have to. It's like the old thing where like when you write, you know, a resume and like, oh, I worked at McDonald's, but you don't want to say that. You're like, well, I was at one of the biggest food chains in the world,
exactly.
You know, working
yes.
and, you know, with, you know, customer relations every day. It's like, yeah, you just try to, you're not lying, but you're saying it as good as you can. And so that's what I was doing. And I think some people saw through it, and some people that saw through it cared, and some that saw through it didn't. You know, like, I don't think I fooled everybody. I think most people weren't, but certain people were like, yeah, get out of here. But other people were like, yeah, of course, I want to be involved regardless of who you are or what
Yeah.
you've done. Because so many of us, like, I think Logan and Mitch had been involved in some, stuff on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, but most of us, our biggest claims to fame were that we were extras in commercials and stuff. Nobody really big was involved in this one at all. So, it was a bunch of us just hungry to try something. And, when you're an actor on that level, you take the commercial work to get money. You take these passion projects more for experience and for showing off your talent. Like,
Yeah.
You're not going to get paid a lot, but you're passionate about the project. So you're like, this will show something good on my reel. Like, I can put this on my reel and people are like, oh, you're good. And you're also hoping to make connections too, even if none of us are like important now. Maybe one of us will be one day. So I think there was a lot of that, but ultimately, I think everybody was just passionate about the story, liked what they had heard and read about it, and, liked each other. People, got along well, and when we, had meetings and talked about it, people all seemed to get along. It was funny when I had, like, the first Zoom call with everybody, like the all hands meeting, I didn't even tell Logan and Mitch what actors were playing who, and they already could tell. They're like, oh, well, obviously, that's the two cops, that's, Strange Woman, that's Rachel, and they could just tell. And it's like, that's how you know that we're all kind of on the same page and things are going according to plan.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, those I forget LMNO, is that right? Those guys are great.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, I liked watching you interact with them and hearing their feedback and seeing back and forth. And I haven't been on many sets, like a handful before the softening, and it was just interesting to see that dynamic. Everybody seemed to be, like you said, interested in it, wanting to do good, as opposed to like one in particular I'm thinking about where it was like everybody seemed to just be like, all right, it's my turn. They go up, they do their thing, and they're like, all right, like how much longer do we have to be here? And it was just like everybody's kind of, it was a downer type of thing. And I was like, man, I thought we were doing something really fun. And it kind of bummed me out. But yeah, nothing like that at all. I feel like everybody in both projects were like excited to be there, laughing, having a good time. Especially this last one, which I won't share too much, obviously. But you gave me some freedom along with some others.
A little bit.
I had such a fun day.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah. So did most people? You had the call. Did you guys go through like reading the whole script? Like everybody knew the whole story? Because I know for me and like people that had like these little tiny parts, I didn't know much at all. I knew like the premise and like at best.
Yeah. So most people only got the script that mattered to them. And this is where we're going to start getting to spoilers pretty soon here. But like only Logan and Mitch had the full script. Devin had the full script. And Lindsay had the full script, and that was it. Everybody else had varying amounts of it because I was kind of coming from the perspective of your performance will not be enhanced by knowing this, so I'm just going to give you the information you need, and that's it.
That's actually why I was asking you, because I was like, I wonder because if something's not as it appears, I think of like The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Did Bruce Willis know that the guy in the beginning was not real? Did Bruce Willis know all along that the kid wasn't real? And if he did know, would he have acted differently, than if they brought that upon him after filming every scene? Like, what would change with the actor's knowledge of what he's really doing if you want, like, the most realistic reaction and a thing like that? Like, I'm trying to say without, trying to beat around the bush here without ruining anything for anybody, but... I think. What are your thoughts on that? Or did you even think about that?
I was thinking about that because, obviously, the more professional actors get, the more you can just trust them to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, my background being working with complete non-actors in high school and middle school and whatever, where it's just friends or, like I said, doing stuff at church or Boy Scouts or whatever, where it's just people that don't know how to act. So you as a director are micromanaging every little thing they do, which I had fun doing. We had a party scene. That's the scene you were in, and that's where I kind of became that director again. That was like the most comfortable I was that whole film, was just being like, okay, you say this exactly like how I'm about to say it, and then repeat after me this. And it's just a different style of directing that when you respect the actor and knowing that that's their craft, you're not going to do that to them. And so this was an interesting project because it was a halfway point where it's like some of these actors you trust, some of them not so much. And so you kind of just, a lot of what directing is knowing how to relate to people. And I've really learned that. Like, I'll get more into that later if we have time, but like, every actor is different, and so you need to treat every situation with those actors differently. So we had some kids in this, you treat them differently than you would Devin or whatever. And Devin was the kind of actor that you would say, do this, and she'd do it. Then you had other actors that you'd say, do this, and then they would do the exact same thing that they had just done. They didn't know how to take a different direction. And so you would have to kind of go a little hands-on and be like, all right, well, maybe try this. How about we do this? And this is not a knock against Josephine at all, but she wasn't really an actor. She had very little experience. She was kind of just doing it for fun. So she was great, and she was phenomenal. I love her performance. She's the one who won Best Actor or Best Actress, and she deserved it. I thought she was great. But she was doing it in a very... once again, I don't want to make this sound like an insult, but she wasn't very professional about it, which is fine. We all kind of weren't.
That makes sense.
So you direct them in a different way. I directed Jess differently than I did with Devin. With Devin, it's very professional. Like, hey, try this, do that, and then she'd do it. And you're like, great, thank you. With Jess, you're joking around, you're laughing in between takes, you're like being like friends, and it's just a different way of interacting and getting the response out of people. So for her, I'm like, I don't need to add extra information that won't help her right now. Just let her know what she needs to know. And that's all, and that's it, Yeah. So like, that's that. I kind of did that with most people involved because I'm like, I don't know where a lot of these people are, and I don't want to confuse them. So it's a need to know basis. We're gonna leave it at that.
All right, that's cool. So a little different for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, which is the same for this one because the second one,
I think
to a degree, right?
Yeah, that wasn't as intentional, I'll be honest. It was because, like, there was nothing that, like, I couldn't tell anybody with this one, but it was just one of those things where, like, so for you or Connor or Eric, who were bit parts, I'm like, you're going to enjoy watching the movie at some point, so why would I spoil it for you? But it wasn't like it was going to affect your performance at all. I just was like, you're here kind of as a potential viewer, so why I spoil it? But it was also partially old habits die hard, and people would be like, well, so wait, what? And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't explain that to you for some reason. Here's the whole plot.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody that was like, a scripted character had full access to the story on the second one. Yeah.
So during the first one, what's some like the biggest hurdles you faced that you were just like not expecting that you got over, or something that happened that you thought was going to be bad, and you look back and it's like, oh, that worked out in our favor?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't say anything was unexpected because I expected everything to be hard. And that's just from my experience making videos. And, the biggest thing that, like, I did every year was the 24/7 videos, which for those of you who don't know is like a church thing that we would do. Where we would have a VBS camp, like a Bible camp that's a week long, 5 days, and each day would have its own separate 5 to 10 minute video. And what we were supposed to do is we were supposed to script those and then act them out months in advance, edit them, and that never happened. And we would always end up filming them either right before or sometimes even the night before, and then the editor would stay up all night slapping it together. So it's like I already was through the boot camp of filmmaking, so nothing really surprised me as far as things going wrong. It was just, the fatigue of it does get to you. Like, there was things where, slight spoiler, but this doesn't matter. There's a scene where there's like this trunk in the basement that it was supposed to be watertight. It was not watertight. I had gone through and taped the whole interior of it. Didn't matter. The liquid inside of it spilled out all over the basement and was very frustrating. So I spent the rest of the night cleaning. I went to like a Dollar General and bought a mop and soap and stuff. Turns out that didn't even work right. So what I ended up doing was just having a bucket and a towel, and I would slap down the towel, get up as much of it as I could, wring it out into the bucket. And I did that thousands of times. My forearms were killing me. But
was this at a location you rented?
No, that was actually Austin's basement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say because that would have been so much worse and stressful.
But it was still stressful
Yeah,
because
well,
I was like, I'm hoping this doesn't stain.
Yeah.
And so at one point I was carrying up a full bucket of this and Nicole's passing and there's like drips down the stairs and she looks at me. I'm like, don't ask questions, just keep walking. It's like, you don't want to know, but everything will be fine. But yeah, I mean, I forget the exact original question you asked, but there weren't any major surprises. It was just, the happy accidents, I think, are surprises. I think being able to roll with the punches, and I've definitely said this story to you before, but like the whole thing with Jurassic Park about how it wasn't supposed to be a cup of water shaken. It was supposed to be the rearview mirror, but they couldn't make it for whatever reason. It wouldn't look right. So then they're just like, oh, we need something, throw a cup with water there. And that's filmmaking in a nutshell to me, is letting the story tell itself for you and to you. You're not forcing things to work that aren't working. You just let whatever happen. So, yeah, there were things that went wrong constantly. Some just genuinely made it hard to make the movie. Others become part of the movie. And you just have to just go with the flow and see what happens. I will say, probably the biggest annoying thing that happened was we had this big party scene that I already mentioned. And we filmed it out of order because you film a lot of stuff out of order. That's just convenience sake. But it took longer than we were supposed to. So there was stuff that was supposed to happen before it got dark. It got dark, so then we had to go back and refilm like 2 entire scenes in the same day now that it was dark. So it's like that scene in the bathroom with me and Lindsay. Her dialogue and my dialogue were filmed hours apart from each other because we could still use her footage fine, but my footage, you can see the window. You can see outside. And so her footage was filmed around...
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
Yeah, her footage was filmed around 1, 2 p.m., my film or my shot had to be refilmed, and we did that later at like 10 p.m. or something. So it's just hours separated because the party took too long, filming that. So yeah, I mean, there's stuff like that, but like I wouldn't say that was a surprise to me. It's just like, okay, all right, pull yourself back up and do it again. And like I said, some things are happy accidents, others are annoying, but yeah, it's just filmmaking. You expect the unexpected. You expect everything to go wrong. So, not really a surprise, just annoying.
Yeah. All right, so getting into the story.
Okay.
Let me hear from your perspective. Let me get a little synopsis.
Are we going spoilers yet? What are we doing? Should we give a spoiler?
You know what? If you're here listening and you want to, because I don't want to not be able to talk about them for a while here. Let's just say right here, go watch it. If
it's on Amazon, Fossum.
There you go, Fossum. Okay.
It's like the word awesome with an F at the beginning.
Oh, Fossum.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right.
I will also say, by the time this is up, I do have a second YouTube channel, Spare Room Films, where I'm going to have a bunch of behind-the-scenes featurettes and blooper reel commentary stuff on there. So that's all fun, too, if you want to check that out. Yeah, I've said this before. As a kid, I always found the behind-the-scenes featurettes more entertaining than the movie itself. So I was like, I can't not do that because I would be cheating my audience from having that. So that's all a lot of fun stuff, too. Yeah.
Nice. All right, so
spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. So let's get the breakdown.
Yeah, so the basic synopsis of it is Ted is a man who believes that he's married to this woman named Rachel, and they have 3 kids together. And then suddenly one day, she and the kids are gone, and they're replaced by this strange woman. And she's claiming that she's his wife. He has no memory of her, has no idea who she is at all. And so then he's going on this, rampage or whatever to try to find her, but the cops don't believe him. Nobody believes him. He's afraid for his life. Things are happening that don't make sense. Seems like he's missing pieces to what's going on. Long story short, turns out he's actually an elderly man with dementia, and everything's an illusion, and nothing is what it seems. And the strange woman that he doesn't recognize is, in fact, actually his wife, and his kids are adults and have moved out. So yeah, it's a bit of a mindfuck of a movie, if you will. Definitely took inspiration from other things. Trust me, I understand. Shutter Island is a great movie. Don't judge me. Yeah, that's the basic idea of it. So there's certain elements that, appear very different on a first viewing than on a second viewing, which is why I have to give Devin a shout out where her character is supposed to seem like the antagonist on a first viewing and then seem like the protagonist on a second viewing. So every line delivery she had to do, she did masterfully because it was both terrifying and sympathetic. And that's why I feel sorry for her that she didn't get more recognition for that. She's just fucking awesome. But anyway, I'll let you ask questions now before I go on too much of a rant.
No, I love it. There was a scene, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, when you grabbed a photo, right? When you were trying to commit. I loved that whole scene. Was that around the party? I'm trying to remember exactly where that was.
The photos is pretty early on. That's when the cops first come over. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're young. Dude, I loved that. I really didn't know until the very end. I was completely shocked.
Good.
And I think you had let a lot in on like what was going on to me other than that. So, and I didn't know that. So I was like, oh, I know, everything that's going on. So I was not expecting that at all. I thought it was pretty cool. I've watched it a few times. I'm always trying to figure out like, all right, is this character actually something else, or are they an illusion? Like, what, was everybody actually somebody in his life? Was he hallucinating any of them? Like, scenarios like that. And it made me want to go back and watch again and again, and try and figure it out. So it was fun each time, because some things, you'll watch, it's like, that's a great movie, and I'm going to put it on the shelf and it'll collect dust. And other ones, it's like, there's depth to them. And I was surprised for your first movie that there was so much of that, or like the lack of over-explaining everything.
Because that's my biggest pet peeve. I hate when it's like, did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it? I'm like, yeah, I got it, thanks. So I would rather
Sorry,
not.
I got stuff he knows, everybody.
Yeah, me too. Hey, I would rather under-explain than over-explain, because an under-explanation, as long as the answers are there, which all the answers are there, they just, some of them are more obvious than others. All the answers can be found, but I'm like, if you don't see it the first time, that's fine. Like, I love The Prestige. It takes you 3 viewings to pick up on everything. And that's a good thing to me.
Yeah.
And, you brought up The Sixth Sense, and that's a movie where you think, oh, a second viewing will make this better, and it actually makes it worse, which is unfortunate. And so I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to over-explain things. I don't want to mess it up on a second viewing. You want to allow for the audience to kind of put the pieces together themselves. And even if there may be something that doesn't make complete sense, allow enough information that they can make up their own theories and figure it out, at least in their own opinion.
Gotcha. So you brought your notebook. I have plenty of questions, but I'm curious some of the things you wanted to talk about.
Well, a lot. So I spent the last few days, I rewatched the movie today. I just finished it right before getting here. But I was watching all the behind the scenes featurettes and stuff just to put myself back there so I could remember as many fun stories or whatever things that happened during it, as well as since I rewatched it, also remind myself fun editing stories or filmmaking moments, or even stuff from the writing process. Because one of my favorite things about the writing process was things just happening and you not even realizing you were writing something special. And so on the very first draft, I was writing the conversation, the first scene where Ted has just woken up and he and Rachel are talking, and it's like, all right, well, I need to go pick up or don't forget about the kids. And he's like, oh yeah, what was his name again? And then I kept writing, and I was like, oh, I've got a really good idea. He should only have 2 kids, but he thinks he has 3 kids. So I should go back and put some hint in the dialogue about that. And I go back, and I'd already put what was his name again? And I was like, oh, it's already there. So much of the writing, sometimes you surprise yourself by putting something in that you didn't even realize it was there. But yeah, I don't know where where I want to go. I want to go everywhere at once. So if you have questions, you can ask, and I'll try to answer them. And if I've got stories, I can add those too.
So, well, actually, this is something a little different.
Sure.
Backtracking, but something I was just thinking about. Any video I've done is me and me. Mm-hmm. Little skits. And there's been many times where I'm editing it, or I'm putting something together, and I'm or even here when I'm editing this, oh, I should add something in the beginning, and I go and I will mention it in the beginning of the, if you're listening on audio, you'll hear me, talk about updates and things like that, or I'll be like, hey, when this was done or said, I meant this. Mm-hmm. And so I have that freedom to do that.
Right.
But when you have more people involved.
Yeah. Makes it tougher.
Was there any point where you're editing and you're like, oh, I really want this? And it's but we'd have to get everything all back together, or you had to re-edit to change something that was maybe, I don't want to say necessarily done incorrectly, but like maybe didn't play out as well when you were watching it back?
Oh, absolutely. The old adage about filmmaking, as opposed to something like writing a book, is you tell the story 3 times. You tell it when you write it, you tell it when you film it, and you tell it when you edit it. Every time the story dies and a new story is birthed out of that. Because what I first wrote was not what we filmed. What I filmed was not what I edited. And it's just a completely different story every time, and you have to kind of die to yourself and let things change. Because, yeah, there was multiple like mental breakdowns I felt like I had during editing, where you're like, I know this is good, I know this, we got this perfectly, and then you're like, and I don't have one good take of this? Great. And so you either just have to cut it out or make it something else. And yeah, that happened constantly during the process, and that's just part of it. Like, and I doubt you or most people would notice that. It's really only the person telling the story that notices those things. Like I mentioned the Spielberg thing with the cup. I'm sure he hated that he had to do that. But everybody else went, that's iconic. We love that.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so sure, there was things there was entire lines of dialogue that like you don't realize until you're filming it or editing it that it sounds like garbage and you have to take it out. And there's certain lines that you can't because it's stuck. And you're like, that's terrible. Like my least favorite part of this movie that I cringe every time I see it is a line of dialogue that just doesn't flow right to me. It sounds preachy, it sounds weird, and I tried my darndest to take it out and it just couldn't because of the timing of everything. So yeah, there's mistakes in there that you just have to die to yourself about.
Right.
But that's just part of it, and I think it's in every level of filmmaking. It's not just me. It happens in Hollywood movies where you're like, that doesn't make sense. But if the story's good enough, you hope people just ignore the mistakes and can accept stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's mistakes in there for sure.
Dude, yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about that when we were at the last movie, and I was like, I wonder if you just like, I meant to ask you, but you were so busy. I'm like, you were a lot like more professional. This one, I was like, it was such a big difference.
Yeah.
And everything just felt put together. The whole thing, I just felt like I had my place to be, and then I was over here, and then it felt very smooth. So I appreciated
to be fair,
that.
your day on the softening set was the worst day of my life, so it wasn't gonna look very professional.
Most of that was me hiding from the camera because that was more like 1-on-1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
The scene, and I was just like back playing on my phone for hours.
Yeah.
But I had a good time talking with everybody.
Yeah.
And trying to squeeze out more of the story from everybody that came back.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, I was like, do you just like, if you went through that before, if you had those moments, the second time around, are you like, all right, I need like 4 takes on this, and maybe try saying it this way in case I go this route, or just little things like that. Like, are you thinking about that when you're are you thinking about the editing process when you're getting shots?
Yeah, you definitely should, because it helps everything in the moment. Where like if we were a bigger budget production, it would be slightly different. But even so, you can still save time and money by knowing how you're going to edit the scene ahead of time. Like, you're like, oh, I know I need this reverse, but I don't need this other shot because we're not going to need it for anything. Or, like my cinematographer, and this is the correct thing to do, so I'm not knocking him for saying this, but it's like you always want to have a wide shot. Just like have one, that's not the right term, but like just have one master cut, one master shot where the camera's back here seeing everything that happens in the entire set for the entire shot, just in case you need it for editing purposes. And, we did it multiple times, but there's also other times where I'm just like, look, we're short on time. I know I'm not going to use it for the scene. Let's not get it. We don't need it. But yeah, I mean, knowing how you're going to edit it ahead of time certainly helps. But the other adage you reminded me of is there's the saying that everybody says is like, one more for safety, because you're always going to need another take than you think. Once you've got the perfect take, like, that was perfect, do it again. That's what you're supposed to do. And so it's actually funny because the scene at the beach, both times we went to the beach, 2 separate days, by the way, which was unfortunate because it was in New York. We went up to Montauk to film, which is quite a drive, and that's both times we did that, the entire day was driving up, filming one scene, driving back. And so the very last thing we filmed on this entire movie was the drive up, the last beach scene. So when Ted and Rachel are both there. And so Josephine and I drove up together. So we're just rehearsing the scene half the drive, which is like 3 hours. So we spent like an hour at least going over the lines. So when we sit down to film it, we nail it on the first take. So we're like, okay, flip it, get the reverse, nail that on the first take, and cut. We're done for the day. Done, period. Actually, that's a wrap. And in retrospect, I'm really mad we did that because we needed more than one take because it makes editing a nightmare when you only have one take. But so, yeah, there was definitely times when like I wish I got more than I did. But
because you can even take like half of like a delivery and cut it in with the other half of a delivery that was
Constantly
better,
did that,
and you
yeah.
could just make it like the perfect piece. But if you have one, even if it looked good, yeah, I could see how you're missing out on things.
Yeah. There's another instance too where so in the kitchen during the party scene where they're asking about Shiloh. I was like, where's Shiloh? Oh, I sent him next door to get napkins. Alone? Yeah, it's just napkins. What's the big deal? That whole dialogue, we never got the reverse. We never got Rachel's angle. So I had to just use one straight shot of me. And that was a nightmare. And so actually Rachel's dialogue gets cut up in the middle. There's a couple different takes there because you don't see her face, so you can get away with that. But I just had to pick the best take of me because there was no way to cut. And so, yeah, little mistakes like that can really make the editing process frustrating. And once again, if there was a bigger budget movie, that kind of stuff doesn't really happen typically, or at least I would hope not. But yeah, we don't have the budget to go back, rent the house out, get everybody back there just to refilm that, make sure continuity is the same as far as my facial hair and my hair and everything. So you're just like, all right, screw it, make it work this way. So much of filmmaking is just making it work and being okay with what it is. Yeah.
So you brought up budget, and you've brought it up a few times.
Yeah.
I don't know if the budget is public, but
it is. Yeah, it's on my IMDb page. So.
So what was the budget?
It ended up being in the ballpark of $25,000, which, in the grand scheme of things, is nothing. For me, it's a lot though. But so the average Hollywood movie, is $100 million. Once you get down to low budget, you're talking $1 to $10 million.
I was surprised. I looked that up recently, and I was very surprised at what low budget films still cost.
Yeah, yeah. So 25,000 is ridiculous. It's nothing. But like I said, people were willing to work for less because they were passionate about it, and we had a bunch of, no offense to everybody involved, nobodies. I wasn't anybody. Nobody else really was yet. So yeah, I went in thinking I was going to spend 10 to 15 and then spent another 10 on top of that. So double what I wanted to.
Percentage-wise, you're probably on point with Hollywood.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, I also I'm proud of how quickly we did it too. That's something that gets brought up all the time where it's like people are always shocked how little I spent and how quickly, because we filmed everything in about 3 weeks. So we had, was it 2 weeks at the house? It was like, I think it was 2 weeks we had at the house, maybe 1 week, but I think it was 2 weeks at the house. And then we had a couple other things that we did around Philly and stuff. We took a break for a couple of months or more, a few months, I forget how long exactly, came back and then filmed for 3 more days. So it was like 3 weeks in total of filming, and that's it, which is insane. You talk about Hollywood, it's like they'll spend an entire day or more, sometimes a week on one scene. And, we're filming 3-4 scenes in a day. And that's something that I'm also proud of, is like being able to just get stuff done. And, that was something that on the new movie, we filmed that in 3 days, an entire feature film in 3 days, which is insanity. And so when I was pitching that to the guys, they were like, 3 days? I'm like, maybe 4. But I think we can do 3. And they're like, if you say so. I'm like, I do. And then we did without a hitch. It was perfect. So I think we went like 1 hour over on day 2. And then day 3, we finished like 2 hours early. So overall, we actually finished in less time than I thought. So yeah, no, I think, granted, like I said, we missed some shots in there. It happens. But also part of it's just being like, I think finding the balance where you don't want to be Kubrick or Fincher where you're getting a million takes of one shot. You also don't want to be Clint Eastwood where you go with the first take on everything, but like finding the balance of like, all right, where's the good enough? Where do you like, if you're already 99% of what you want, how much better is that 100%, that last percent going to change the viewer's opinion of what just happened? So Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of different opinions on this. The fact also that we really didn't storyboard at all is probably making everybody who knows anything about movies really cringe when I say that. But it's, there was certain shots that I went in knowing exactly how I wanted them, but a lot of it was just finding out what looks good in the moment, which once again, sorry to everybody that's passionate about filmmaking, that sounds like the dumbest thing you can do. But I don't know, that was kind of just like going with the flow and having that debate. And that's why I love Logan and Mitch, where they weren't afraid to tell me I was wrong about stuff. They weren't afraid to argue with me. Mitch is like, this is my reputation on the line as a cinematographer. So if it looks like shit, they're not going to be mad at you. They're going to be mad at me. So I'm not going to let you make me film a bad shot. And so I love that collaboration because I have a certain eye, I think, as a director and a cameraman, but like you want people more talented than you surrounding you for those kind of things. Like, I can act, but I want actors better than me. I can do camera work, but I want a camera guy better than me. I can record sound, but I want a sound guy that knows more than me. So it's like you want to know a little bit about everything as a director, but you want to have specialists that are better than you at all of those things. So stream of conscious with that answer went all over the place, but I hope that answered what you were looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. What with that budget? You said you went over. I mean, if you had an unlimited budget on that project, I mean, how much really would have changed? Would it? I mean, what would have been in the stuff? Would it have been like? For me, the obvious thing would have been like location. It would have been maybe not equipment, but like maybe a location. Special effects, things like that. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm like, is there anything you would change story-wise? Like
a few things, yeah.
Like thinking about the fact that George Lucas wrote a space opera and like had no, like that was so much ambition.
Yeah.
And when not knowing like the budget or how that was going to go, that's something like where so many things had to be created for that.
Yeah.
That to me is mind-blowing when I look back on things like that. So like for you, was there anything that you had the budget would have made something that you think would have made the movie better? Or do you think you worked with what you had and the movie, as far as the quality, would it have changed the quality? I guess it's kind of like, does money really fix the things? Like, do you think the quality of the outcome would have been that much different with like 3 times the budget?
Yes and no. So there's different ways I would have allocated the resources. There was a scene that I had in the first draft of the script that got cut pretty quickly once I realized I was going to make it, which, was a couple things, but like I had scenes involving like cascading waterfalls of blood down the stairs. Didn't film that because I knew I couldn't. Going into a room that was like an entire room full of corpses on the floor. I knew we couldn't film that. So it's like definitely would have changed things if I had the larger budget. But I totally agree that artists do well despite their means. You will work with whatever you have. Now, obviously, money is necessary to a degree, because like saying like, well, what if we cut the budget down to $2,000? So we're filming everything on a camcorder. I'm not hiring anybody to do the sound. Obviously, money matters. So adding more money would have made the equipment better. We would have had a larger crew, been able to, have better special effects, all of that. Yeah, and that all would have made it better, but I don't think it would have made the story better. It would have made the representation of the story better, possibly, but you're not making the story better with effects or money or anything like that. An old quote by George Lucas, which seems very ironic now, is like, special effects aren't the story, they help make the story. And so when you've got bad CGI or whatever, it doesn't ruin the story, but it the good CGI also doesn't make the story all of a sudden good. So I think everything and nothing would have changed at the same time. It still would have been my story. It still would have been limited by me because I'm the writer and the director. So it all still would have gone through me as a siphon. I'm still the bottleneck. Making the story can only be as good as I make it at this point, being not only the writer director but also the editor of it. But yeah, I think money definitely helps, but it's not the end-all be-all. The new movie I made cost $10,000 and is, to me, a million times better.
That blows my mind that was less.
Well, it's
just
because,
with what's going on in my mind, like what I'm thinking about what took place, the location and everything. That's the set, the props. That's crazy.
Well, the biggest thing is only filming for 3 days. If we had filmed for 3 weeks using the same daily rate, it would have, so that's over $3,000 a day, because it was $10,000 across 3 days. If I did that for 3 weeks, been much, much more. So that's, it's the kind of movie it is. I literally wrote that movie based on the ideas I had during filming this movie of how would I make a movie that would be easy to make and cheap. And I was just like, one location and fewer days. And so that's, we did a lot of the second movie all in the preparation. Like, the lead actress and I rehearsed for like a month and a half, 2 months before filming, so that when we filmed, we would get everything on the first take. So there's very few second takes in the second movie at all. Almost everything was done on the first take. And that's, completely different way of filming. And it, not saying that's the right way to do every movie, but it was the right way for that movie. So it made it a lot cheaper. But anyway, and that was the point I tried to make in the last podcast, by the way, but sound like a drunken idiot when I was saying, like, bringing up Taika Waititi, and I was like saying, well, Thor Ragnarok cost $200 million or whatever it cost, and it sucks. Drunk way of saying it. The sober way of saying it is, if you look at Taika Waititi and his movies, Jojo Rabbit cost less than half, I think, of what Thor Love and Thunder cost. And everybody should agree that movie is 10 times better. And so that's what I'm trying to say is budget isn't everything. And I don't want to say that I'm a better director than Taika Waititi or anything. That's not what I meant. I was just drunk. What I meant was budget doesn't make the movie. But it can help. It does help. You need some money to make anything.
Sometimes I wonder, like for me, like if I'm cornered, backs against the wall, that's when my best performance comes out.
Yeah.
No matter what the scenario.
Yeah, I mean, that's a famous story, especially in comedy. But like you look at Monty Python, The Holy Grail, I don't know how much you know about the making of that, but they had no money for that. And so like the things like having the coconuts instead of horses, that was because they couldn't afford...
Did we just talk about this?
I don't think so.
I just learned some of this stuff. Like I'm talking like within the past week. Anyway.
But so they couldn't afford horses, so they made a joke out of it. And so sometimes it's easier in comedy to do that. But, necessity breeds invention, And so when you have to come up with something, then you'll be more creative to come up with it. And so that's where I think some of my favorite things about The Softening were when I was backed into a corner and had to come up with something, especially in the editing. Because, a lot of the writing and acting, you're not really thinking you're backed into a corner. You're just going for it. And then editing, you're like, I have nothing to do but make what I have work. And so a lot of scenes in that movie were created in the editing room. Like there was a shot several shots I just made from nothing, where in that beach scene that I was mentioning with Ted and Rachel, there's an establishing shot where it's this wide shot of Ted just sitting there. And that wasn't a scripted shot. We didn't film that. That was just, we were going to have a wide of Ted and Rachel talking. But I was already sitting over there to show Mitch where I was going to be so he could set up the camera. And then he set up the camera and hit record and then said, we're ready. So then Jess started walking over. And so what I did was I took where Jess was and I edited over top of her the beach from when she wasn't there yet, so that it looks like you can't see her at all. So it just became a whole separate shot entirely. And there was multiple things I did throughout the movie where like you're taking, anytime it showed the sky, I would crop the sky and make it separate and then speed it up to like 300%. So just the clouds are moving faster. Just little things to make the movie look more interesting and dynamic. And so it's like there's a lot of shots in this movie that were made by necessity of just trying to make something out of nothing. And there's some of my favorite things. There was another thing where in the basement, I wanted to use 2 different takes of Devin and I arguing, and it didn't line up when we switched angles. So once again, split the screen down the middle so that she was reacting and I could take my reaction and delay it by a second so that when I turned around, it was in time with the previous take. And it's like just taking things that didn't really happen and making them happen. And that's so exciting to me as an editor to find and make new shots that weren't actually there. Yeah, it's a fun part of filmmaking.
I'm sure that was a fun learning curve.
Yeah, definitely a long learning experience. This was the first thing I ever edited on Premiere Pro. Had never edited anything on Premiere Pro, and then of course the first thing I edit is a feature-length film.
I'm sure you were very grateful for YouTube.
I used YouTube a little bit, yeah, some tutorials there, but a lot of it was just trial and error. I frankly learned new things editing the second movie that I hadn't learned on the first one. I was like, really? This would have been helpful before.
Dude, the amount of shortcuts it's taken me years to figure out, like, oh, that I could just press that button. I was doing like 5 steps to do like an alt, whatever.
I just found out.
It blows my mind how much time I've wasted.
Like a month or two ago, found out that if you press the up arrow, it takes you to the beginning of the clip. Did not know that for the entirety of the first movie. And I'm like, really? That's so simple. But yeah.
So is the softening complete? Do you feel like the story is complete and told?
Like as far as a sequel or something?
Like if somebody was to come to you
it?
and try and force you into a sequel, do you think you would decide to make it into a musical?
To spite them? Maybe.
To spite them?
No. But if I ever did a sequel, it wouldn't be for a long time. But I have kind of had an idea that I probably never will do. But I've thought about making the movie again from her perspective. I've thought about doing that because I think
that's kind of what I meant. Like, is there anything in that movie that you want to expand on or more story to tell?
I don't really, but if I did, that would be it. And like I said, if I choose to do that, it would be late in life when I'm like reminiscing on being old. So, because I just, and that's the thing that like really breaks my heart is like when you watch it the second time from the perspective of knowing what she's going through, especially the ending of the movie, God, Devin's a good actor. The way that she delivers some of those lines tears your heart out, especially at the end in the basement. And by the way, shout out to Devin. Rewatch the movie when you get a chance because to refresh your memory and everybody watching, so she tells him the truth. Like, Rachel left you years ago, yada, yada, yada. We got married. Your memories are gone. They're messed up. And so he chooses not to believe her and attacks her. They roll around. She hits him with the hammer, gets up, gets the knife to defend herself. And then she has this breaking point where she goes like, why couldn't you forget about her? Why did you forget about me? Why couldn't you remember me instead? And at the, on the first viewing, that line can still be kind of taken of like, she's some evil mastermind that's trying to manipulate his brain and she's mad. You might not take it that way, but maybe you will. There's some doubt there. You're still trying to figure out what the hell's going on, so you can kind of miss what's going on there. But on a second viewing, this is the plea of a broken woman who's in love with a man that doesn't know she exists. And, I'm tearing up just like thinking about it right now, like getting emotional about it because like the way she says it is so painful. Where she's like, why me? Why her? The woman that doesn't even love you, doesn't even think about you anymore. You remember her? I gave you everything and you don't even know who I am. And so she's not necessarily mad at him, but she's like mad at the universe for doing this to her. And that was the first take, by the way. We only did one take of that. Because and you'll watch the behind the scenes if you go to that YouTube channel and watch that making of that scene, because like she does that line and there's just a pause and then we're just like, I think we got it. Like, I think that was it. And that was a moment where like, I know you're supposed to, the old adage, one more for safety. I was like, I don't think we need to. I really just want that take no matter what happens, because you're never going to get that energy again. But yeah, that was a brilliant performance by Devin, and I love that line, especially how she said it. She said it wrong is a thing too. She said the line wrong, and I think she made it better by saying it wrong. Because how I wrote it was like, why couldn't you forget about her? Why couldn't you remember me instead? I'm just like overemphasizing these things. But she just said it fluidly, and it made it so much better, and just like she changed the emphasis and it made it better. So that's why I was like, I don't want to give you direction. I'm just going to make it worse. So we're going with that take.
So I don't know enough about Alzheimer's, but like that scene specifically, it makes me wonder like, oh man, a lot of relationships are like that, right? They're like heavier on one side than the other. And I think like in a marriage that probably shifts, it's a flow, you're kind of both working with each other, and it's not as extreme as other relationships like in your younger days. But hopefully.
Yeah. It's also not logical either, and I do want to say that, because it doesn't necessarily mean, you would hope not, like, I'm not saying this is, canon or anything, but it's like, it doesn't necessarily mean that Ted didn't love her more than Rachel. It could just be that that part of the brain is gone now.
Well, that's kind of like what I was curious about. Like, just thinking about Alzheimer's, it's like a fear of mine. I've had so many head injuries, severe ones, close to one another. Alzheimer's, and I'm assuming that that's heightened my chances. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what they claim.
It is. Same for me. Yeah. And it's also genetic, like I said, my grandfather.
So I haven't had anybody in my family have that.
Good.
That I know of.
Good.
I also don't know most of my family.
Oh, fair enough.
But but that's just like a fear of mine.
Yeah.
Like being a burden, and also just forgetting. Like, I look at my kids and they're like, I think all the time, like, man, this is like my world. I look at my wife and my 2 kids, soon to be 3, which I don't think anybody out here knows this, or, well, I guess people that know me that are listening. But yes, I'm having another child. In fact, when this comes out, if it's delayed, it's because the baby came early, because this is going to be out like right after the baby comes.
Cool.
Anyway, so I'm excited about that.
Good.
But yeah, just looking at that, it's like, man, like, I don't want to give this up at all. Like, this is amazing. And to think about forgetting something like that, or like forgetting, I've been thinking about it mostly just because, you're coming on. I'm thinking about Alzheimer's lately, and thinking about like forgetting your own son, looking at him and like yelling at him, kicking him out of the house. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. And that was the inspiration for this was, like I said, my grandfather. So the last time I visited him before he died, it was like kind of like the whole family got together knowing what was going on. And once again, nothing against my family or anybody. And I've already said this to them, so I know that they nobody would be shocked by me saying this. But there was an overall sense I got where I was frustrated, kind of, where it felt like my whole family was going like, man, this sucks for us that he's doing this to us. Or like and I was like, yeah, but like, what is he going through? And that's where like I was waiting for a movie to really capture that. And there was several movies that were similar to that, where the father came out with Anthony Hopkins, and I was like, yeah, that was perfect, but it wasn't a thriller, or it wasn't a horror. And then I'm Thinking of Ending Things was coming out, and I was like, that sounds like it. And then I was like, still not really exactly what I wanted. It was very close as you really could get without reading my mind. It's also why, if you notice, Rachel's reading that book at the beginning of the movie, because I was just like, shout out to this book, it's fucking awesome. So is the movie. And so I was just like, I really want to capture the feelings of what it must be like to go through that. And so it's like, I want to make it terrifying, but I also want to make it confusing, and I want to make it like nostalgic, like a sad longing for something. And so those are the 3 emotions I set out to make the audience feel. So if you felt any of those, like, I feel like I've accomplished my goal. And I've definitely felt like everybody's come back with at least one of those elements of the story impacting them, where I'll admit it, I don't think it's the scariest movie in the world or anything. It's not really supposed to be. There's only a few scary moments, but even so, limited by effects and stuff. Also, my directing. But like, there's the confusion element, which I know it definitely impacts a lot of people, where they're like halfway through the movie, like, I thought I knew what was going on, now I don't. It's just, what is happening? And then also, all the flashback moments are like really this nostalgic kind of feeling, rose-colored like lens kind of moments, where most people that actually saw it said that those moments were their favorite scenes, and they're like, you should make a rom-com or something next time. Like, no, but maybe eventually, because it's like, yeah, I wanted to capture those different elements and really show what it feels like and how painful it is. And sure, yeah, it's painful and you really feel for, like I said, Strange Woman, Devin's character. But at the same time, you should feel sorry for Ted too, because he's the one that's confused and going through it. So yeah.
I wanted to ask you some things that I have my own thoughts, and I'm wondering if I've caught things or if there's things I'm missing.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted I'm going to spout out like a few different scenes, and I'm just curious your thoughts on them, like meanings, like if there was like a second meaning.
Yeah.
The jump scare, right?
Which one?
Outside the window. I believe it was outside the window of a car.
Okay.
I want to know fully what was going on there, like in reality.
Right.
What was actually happening versus what we saw.
Right. So I'll add one caveat before I answer any questions, and that is, I think as a creator of these kind of things, you kind of want to not fully answer everything because you kind of want to let the audience...
I kind of expected that, but...
So in the case, I just want to make sure we're talking about the same scene. So to set it up, Ted wakes up in bed. He's had the knife wound. He gets scared. He runs out of the house after, fighting off this strange woman. He gets in this car, can't start the car. Face pops up next to him, cut to black. So in that scene, the face obviously is Skinner, who I will say is an amalgamation of different things. So we see at the end of the movie, if you remember, when we see the nursing home, Skinner's on the TV. We also have him on the TV at the motel. So the
I don't think I caught that.
Well, watch it again. Yeah, so I will say that that's kind of your answer right there, is that he's on the TV. Yeah, that's your answer.
Dude, I can't believe that was like so in front of my face.
Well, it's in the back.
Well, it's still.
It is.
I feel like because I was the second, third time around, I was peeking at everything. My brother
forced me to add that in because he was like, nobody's gonna understand that. I'm like, so nobody understands what the dog man is in The Shining, and he was like, good point, but put something in there. I was like, all right, fine.
All right, and then
I don't know if it's just PTSD, but this water tastes like pasta to me. And I don't know if it's just Jollibee coming back.
I was just going to make a Jollibee reference. I don't know what to say.
I don't know. Pasta water.
I have another one if you'd like. It's not pasta water, I promise.
I mean, I'm fine with this, but I'll probably take another one at some point. But anyway.
The lotion specifically.
That's one that's been brought up to me a lot. Yeah.
Was that something that you knew was going to be such like a common theme throughout the movie when you were doing that? Like, did you write it in like that? Or at some point were you like, hey, let's keep doing this to add in, for me, just assuming that's like it's an elderly man.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So if you could expand on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, its primary purpose was as a red herring with kind of feeding into the whole, there's a guy trying to skin people alive, so he needs their skin to be moist or whatever. And so it's just something to kind of confuse the audience and give them a false rabbit hole to go down. I was
so confused until the last 30 seconds.
But, there are, answers that can go along with the reality of it, where it's like so much is going on to Ted that is people trying to, whether it's his own wife or later the nurses and stuff, are trying to help him. And he's not viewing it as being helped. He's viewing it as a threat because he doesn't understand it. Whether it's the medicine, whether it's being made to take a bath, whether it's lotion, whatever it is, it's innocent or good things that he is misconstruing. So, yeah, being an elderly man, there's certain things, certain, practices or habits that they try to get you to do. And, oftentimes, especially... Well, I was going to say especially elderly man, but I don't know if that's any more common or not. But like you often see in nursing home patients when they're being made to do things, they're like, well, why are you forcing me to do this? I don't want to do it. Like, why are you making me take a bath in front of you? That's disgusting, or whatever it is. So there's a lot of things in there, including the lotion, that can be answered by some sort of, practice like that. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't anything like deeper or anything else hidden in there. What are some things that people brought up? Like that a lot of people would come back to you that maybe you wanted to leave. You liked that they kept not knowing versus maybe the opposite. Yeah,
so I mean, just the timeline is a thing that a lot of people bring up a lot, and I have it written out. I should have brought it. I didn't. But like every scene obviously is out of order to an extent, but there is a correct order that you can put all the scenes in. There's still some gaps in there. But like when you take it all out of order and arrange it back in, a lot of things become much more obvious and clearer. And so I think a lot of people are kind of confused exactly about the timeline of stuff. For example, like the motels and what's going on with that. And my answer to that is like, well, the motel is when he's in the nursing home. And so then they're like, okay, so when did he go to the nursing home? And it's like, well, clearly later, because if he's still at the house. And so that's where most people kind of seem to struggle, is finding out exactly the timing of everything. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest, hurdle for a lot of people. The way I took the gaps was a gap in memory. Yeah. Like we're seeing it through his eyes. So some of the things I don't get, neither does the main character. Right. And that's kind of how I took that. Was that like the intention with that, or was... Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I feel like there is an answer in there to any important question that may be there. Like, you may ask certain questions that, like, well, why wasn't he wearing shoes? And I'm like, because he wasn't. But like, from my perspective, any important question you may have, there is an answer for. It's just, depending on how important it is, the answer is more or less obvious. Because, like, obviously I needed to answer the question of what's going on the most. Like, he's got dementia. I'll give you that answer. Who's Rachel? I'll give you that answer. A lot of those questions is told through dialogue, so you can get the answer. But the less important it is, the more I leave it open to interpretation and subtle answers, where it's like, it is in there. Like the thing with Skinner being on the TV and stuff. It is in there, but it's not going to smack you across the face with it, because you don't need to know that to get the rest of the movie. So it's on a moving scale, a sliding scale for how obvious the answer is.
I want to see it again just to see that last.
I thought you were gonna
with that. Dude, yeah, I didn't do my homework.
It's all good.
I've actually watched it quite a few times.
Yeah,
I've been going through the movie and like trying to think of scenes and stuff, but I think most of the things I was curious about we have talked about.
Okay,
like specifically the jumping with the memory. Yes, but I'm trying to think. Is there any other stories that you were? I know you wrote down. I don't want to not ask a question that's going to bring up a good story that I wouldn't think of.
I can go through here. There's plenty of stuff from the filming of it that was fun. So I don't know if I brought this up or not on the last one. I don't think I did. But the house was haunted. Did I tell you that? No. And neither did the guys that owned the house until we started filming. So like, I found the house through a house rental app that I'm not going to name by name, because it's technically you're not allowed to do this. And so I just contacted a lot of people through the app and was like, hey, I want to rent to film there. Is that fine? And 90% of them said, no, that's against the terms. And I said, understandable, have a good day. But 2 people got back and said, sure, you want to come see the house and make sure you want to use it? And I said, absolutely. So I went and visited both. Ended up writing a different script based on each house, by the way. Like, I had to adapt the script for the different rooms because, by the way, the house that we actually filmed in was all on 1 floor. The original script called for it to be a 2-story house, and that changed. And so I had, like, a scene written where, the scene where we were just talking about where he gets attacked by a strange woman and leaves the house. I was going to have to fall down a staircase and stuff. Glad we wrote that out. But so, anyway, I go to the house. I'm like, this house is awesome. Because also that scene with like the knocking on the glass, I wrote for that house, because initially it was like the doorknob shaking. And I was like, cool and creepy in its own way, but kind of cliche. Having just the whole back half of the house be glass, I was like, holy shit, this is a horror movie house. This is perfect. So I kind of chose the house purely based on that. It was just aesthetically beautiful and perfect. But yeah, I'm like, great, awesome, I'll book it, see you in a month or whatever. And I come back, and the guy's there giving us a semi-tour, because now Logan and Mitch are there too. So he's helping us get set up, make sure we're all good. And he's like, oh yeah, by the way, the house is haunted. I'm like, what the you didn't say this when I was here before. And he's like, yeah, so if you hear like voices or footsteps in the night, it's just normal, don't worry about it. I'm like, I will be worried about it, thank you. Because I wasn't planning on spending a lot of time there outside of filming, but I was like, I was going to sleep there a couple nights if it was just like we're filming at night and then we're filming early next morning. Might as well just stay there. So I was going to do that a couple times. So one night I did. And I'm laying in bed, and I start hearing like sound outside in the hallway, and I'm like, oh God, that's the thing. And then I realized, oh, it's a cat. I'm like, oh, okay, it's a cat. So I get up. I'm like, did they have a cat? Because I'd seen like a pet bowl in their kitchen. So I'm like, was it just hiding the entire time and then thought we were gone, so it came out? I'm like, if there's a cat here, we kind of need to know, because that could ruin a shot or something. So I go out. I'm like, hey, cat, whatever. And I'm looking around, and I don't see the cat. I'm like, I guess he heard me and hid again. So anyway, we go through, and then I'm like, oh, by the way, there's a picture of a cat on the fridge. So I'm like, duh, of course there's a cat here. And we have a shot of it that's in the movie. And then, so I'm showing the movie at the Ambler Theater that, you were there for that. And the homeowners come up to me, and they're like, oh, we loved it. It was so great. And we actually got really emotional because you showed a picture of our dead cat. And I was like, huh? Your dead cat? I heard your cat. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, does your neighbor, because like, so the basement is rented out too, so somebody else lives down there. I'm like, does your neighbor have a cat? And they're like, no. But yeah, we often hear cats at night. That's, the ghost cat. I was like, okay, cool. Well, I heard it. But then also a more interesting story as well with the ghosts was, so we were shooting a scene in the hallway where like the master bedroom's at the end, and then the kids' bedroom was like one door over or whatever. And it was a scene where I was supposed to be leaving the kids' room and then walking back down the hall. And every time I would close that door, the bedroom door would open, and it ruined every take. And so I'm just getting more and more frustrated. And eventually, I close the door and go, "Please, not right now." And it never opened again. It just stopped opening. So there was ghosts, but they were friendly ghosts, so it was okay.
It's Casper.
Yeah, or Kitty. I don't know. I couldn't think of Whiskers. It was Whiskers, the ghost who liked to open doors.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know how much I believe in anything like that, but if somebody told me that, I'd be spooked.
Yeah.
I'd be so spooked to sleep in there.
Yeah.
For me, I don't doubt anything happened. To me, I'm like, it's demons. It's a demon. Everything's a demon.
Yeah, no, I don't believe in anything until it's happening.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly.
And then I'm like the most superstitious person in the world. But yeah, it was fun. So like I already told you about having to clean up the entire bloody floor trunk. So like I said, I bought that trunk off of Amazon knowing it was a cheap prop, but I covered the entirety of the bottom and sides with packaging tape, going like, all right, this is waterproof, got it. And then we start pouring the fake blood in, and it starts seeping out the sides, and like, I guess that's what we're filming. Sure, it makes for some cool shots, but then everybody breaks and goes home for the night, and I'm there 4 hours, I think, cleaning up that blood. Got like no sleep that night. The whole project, by the way, I was sick from like day one. I had a really bad cold, and you can tell certain scenes I'm just tired. My nose is clogged. I'm just like out of it. And I'm like, that's kind of perfect though for Ted. Like it worked really well. Like he's probably out of it and sleep deprived too. But yeah, I mean, I was probably averaging 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night, just worked to the bone, and loved every second of it. Like I said, like I wouldn't change it for anything. I think it's a funny comparison, but there's an old adage, if you've worked in a church before, you've probably heard this, where it's like when somebody wants to be a pastor, they make them clean the urinals. That's like where you start. And so I was thinking that washing the blood, where I'm like, this is my urinals. Like this is my boot camp, because like I'm earning this. And so even though it was like the worst, most painful cleaning up job I'd ever had to do, I was like, this is perfect, and I love this, and I get to do this. Another funny story from filming was, so we have that shot in bed where he's like bleeding everywhere, obviously fake blood, but so the sheets covered in blood. And then, so that was the last thing we filmed at that house, or one of the last things. So I have to take all the sheets home with me that night. So I'm taking out these giant bloody sheets and blankets to my car, like, hope none of the neighbors are watching. Yeah, a lot of fun stories with that.
I just picture you getting pulled over.
You're like, what you got there? Nothing. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other funny stories there were. I know I wrote down a lot. I'm not just trying to read out of a notebook, though. But, yeah, it was just, I equate the feeling of it to like a summer camp. It kind of felt like a summer camp vibe with those guys, where it's like, you're kind of all trauma bonding a little bit, because it's a lot of work. None of you are sleeping enough, but you're doing something that you all really love to do. So you kind of just like, it may not have been fun in the moment, but you have so many great memories from it, especially going through the behind the scenes footage again and seeing how much fun we were all having. It was great. Like, I mean, because none of us had done I know it was a very small thing, but like none of us had shot an action scene before. So like when I had to jump on Devin and like strangle her and stuff, we're all figuring out how to do that for the first time. Like we've got a crash mat that I have to like fall onto but not land on her, and then she's trying not to hit her head, and then Mitch is like, how do I do this with the camera? It was a lot of fun figuring stuff out on the fly. And like certain shots, same kind of thing, where like that after she gets up and like threatens him with the knife or defends herself with the knife, he gets up, tries to run up the stairs, passes out, and falls back down. And once again, you see this in the behind the scenes where it's like, we only did 2 shots of that. One where I fall completely wrong, and then Mitch goes, that looks bad, try this. And then I do that, and we go, all right, cool, got it. And it's funny, like, looking back, how many things were done in 1 or 2 takes of just like, hey, try this. Okay, cool, good. And you move on. Especially because from the straight acting stuff, this is why I love Devin. Because, like, we would be doing dialogue, and you'd do 20 takes of me just to get something usable. And then we're like, all right, let's get Devin. And she'd nail it first one. And you're like, all right, cool, moving on. I really do want to talk about Devin and Jess, though. If you want to interrupt me and ask questions, I'm just going to keep rambling.
Now go for it.
So, like I said, Devin was the first person to sign on, and I really have a soft spot for her because of that, as well as just working with her was phenomenal. I really needed both Devin and Jess, too, for different reasons, like I was saying. And you mentioned the difference between my directing from the first movie to the second movie was astronomical, and everybody's told me that. And a lot of it was just confidence and comfort, and knowing that I knew what I was doing helped a lot. But on the first movie, I didn't have that, where I was just like, it was like I was frustrated the whole time. Like, I'm like, I know I can do this. I know I can do this. Let me prove that I can do this. But you're scared the whole time that you're going to mess up. And luckily, I was surrounded with people that were both talented, but also very forgiving in a lot of ways. And so Devin and Jess both were so helpful in very different ways, where Devin was the ultimate professional, and she would, like I said, ask her to do something, she did it. Like, one day I forgot a prop, so I asked her, hey, can you stop at a dollar store and grab this for me? And she did that. But she would also always remember her lines, always was on time, if not early. She did everything perfectly. She would always try whatever you did without questioning it. I was like, hey, how about, like, when you say this line, you tilt your head the other way that you were doing, and just any little adjustment, she would just be like, got it, do it. And she would nail it every time. And then Jess, like I said, she wasn't as, like, polished or professional or whatever, but that was perfect in her own way. Like, she encouraged me to be a great director in a different way, where it's like, you get the confidence from Devin just doing everything and acting like you're a great director. Jess would say to you, like, shut up and just do it. And that was perfect too, because I'd be like, I think I want you to do this, but I don't know. And she's like, if you want me to do it, just say it and I'll do it. And that was perfect too. Like, I love both of them. They were so helpful in their own ways. I wouldn't have been able to do without them. They were great. Logan and Mitch too, like I said, having in a very different way, like having kind of like a competitive edge from those guys where, like, we want to make something good and we're not going to let it be bad, is so helpful too, because 1, they want to help you, but 2, they'll fight with you. And I think that's something every creator needs in a collaboration, is somebody not to just be a yes man and do whatever you tell them to do, but actually want to work with you. And if you're wrong, they'll tell you. It's so important. So yeah, I think everybody,
I feel like in life too, just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You need people that are going to push back.
Yeah, and you see that all the time with, like, rich people or famous people. All they've got is yes men in their life. Ruins their life or ruins their art. Like, that's why so many great artists in their old age can't make good stuff anymore, because nobody tells them when they're doing something wrong anymore. So luckily I don't have that benefit, because nobody trusted me at all, which was great. And I love, one of my favorite stories from filming was, so the literal first thing we shot was we had Devin do the opening line, just the audio, where it's like, hands are looking kind of dry, why don't you soften them up? And then cut to me, putting the lotion on. My hands are nice and dry. It's perfect audio. Putting the lotion on in the, in the mirror in the bathroom. But then the next day when we actually started filming, the first thing we shot was the first scene of the movie, where wake up, kids, yada, yada, yada. What was his name again? And so for that scene, I'm intentionally overacting. It's kind of like, you're playing around with your wife, you're being goofy. And so I'm putting on a little bit of a Jim Carrey or whatever, just like, oh, what was his name again? Like, bad acting, intentionally so. And I could feel the air being sucked out of the room, where they're like, oh no, we just signed on to this project and this guy's an idiot. Like, we thought we liked the script, but this guy can't act and he's forcing him to be in it, and this is going to be terrible. And I'm kind of starting to panic too, because I can feel I'm losing the room. The very next scene we filmed after that was the fake out at the end where Rachel's back and you think she's back. But then, you cut away to the nursing home. But so that's the next scene. And, like, on command, tearing up, being emotional, delivering lines perfectly if I do say so myself. But just like great chemistry between the two of us, just an emotional, impactful scene. And you just felt a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, all right, we know what we're doing now. All right, we're fine. And it was such a funny moment where I'm like, I had to earn their trust. And that first day was a bit of a roller coaster. And then after that, everybody's like, okay, we're making something and we're confident. We're going to make something good. But yeah, that's one of my favorite stories to tell because everybody was freaking out. And then it's like, oh, okay.
Did you ever talk to them about that later?
I brought it up actually filming this movie, and we kind of laughed about it a little bit. But yeah, it was kind of just like all right, moving on. Don't think about that anymore kind of thing in the moment. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I'm excited. It's on a platform that people can see now.
Yeah.
So we don't have to just tease them.
Yeah, I'm so glad. That was something that I didn't know would ever happen, where like I thought Tubi was going to happen or something like that. But Amazon Prime, literally, like, I don't want to get into legal trouble. I don't know how much I can say here, but like when I was talking to different distribution agents and stuff, their advice was don't even worry about Prime. It's not getting on there. And then that's the place it got. And so it's huge.
Yeah, I was very surprised to hear that from you.
Oh, I'm stoked.
Not anything to you. Yeah. I know it's difficult.
I'm stoked it got there. Yeah,
that's cool. So this new movie, what's the time frame? I don't want to get too much into it, but time frame, like when can we possibly hear more about it?
So unfortunately, I mean, we're a long ways out with that. So I just started submitting to festivals. Frankly, it's not even really done yet. I submitted to the Austin Festival again with a rough edit.
Sorry. That's what I was just going to ask you. Do you always submit the full movie, or can you submit like portions or scenes?
You can submit a rough edit. It's generally a bad idea to, but it depends on how well you know the people. Like I said, we won Best in Show last year, so I left a note and was like, this is a rough edit. This is the list of things we have to do before we show it. Trust us, and they did. So
that's cool.
So yeah, I think you're going to be judged on the rough edit still. Like they'll be like, all right, well, this isn't complete, so we're going to take off points for that, I'm sure. But still, yeah, I mean, so we're still very early on to the process of that. I think we should be done editing it. I should be done editing it in the next month or two. I want to do another like friends and family screener kind of thing. Then it's going to be off to the races with the festivals. I think the timeline for it is a year and a half until it's up somewhere.
That's a big difference in the softening.
Is it?
I think so. Right.
I think it's probably about the same.
Is it really?
Yeah.
When did you film the softening?
The softening, like I said, I filmed it in 22 in March. Finished filming it because we went back.
Yeah, you're right.
Filmed it more in August or July, whenever that was. And then I had it finished edited. I thought I had it finished edited by like February, start submitting it. And so that would have been February 23, and now it is January 24.
Well, it feels like a lot longer.
So, yeah, that's why I'm not talking about it. But, yeah, so it's on its way, but I would give it another year and a half till it's going to be up. I want to have a trailer done pretty soon, but I want to finish the movie before I edit a trailer together.
If we go to that other YouTube channel, what would you say it was? Your
Spare Room Films.
Is that where we could go for updates, or if somebody subscribes, will they get updates about that, or is it just?
I'll probably put stuff there. That's mainly gonna be though, like whenever I do trailers or behind the scenes stuff, or I'm gonna do a full director's commentary, which I'm excited to record. I haven't done that yet, but it'll be kind of like, the stories I'm telling right now mixed with a little bit more practical stuff, but just, typical director commentary kind of stuff. Excited to do that, have that up there. Like I said, blooper reel. The different kind of behind the scenes featurettes I'm excited about because I've got something called like making a scene where I'll have like all the shots from that scene, like not the entirety of the shots because you'd have hours of footage for a scene, but just, like 20 minutes of us going around trying multiple takes of the same thing, and kind of like you get to see the creative process, which I think is so exciting, where it's like you get to see those moments from like, hey, don't fall like that, how about we fall like this, or we didn't like that, let's try this angle, and you get to see some of that. I included as much of that as I could. And then I also have other things where it's like a full take of something where like we set up the camera and let it roll for 20 minutes and you get that whole unbroken 20 minutes. I think that's exciting too for a different reason. So all different kinds of stuff like that. Updates are probably going to be primarily on the SimonsRants channel though. I feel like that's probably where I'm going to keep that.
That's cool. It's exciting, man.
Also, website, Spare Room Films Productions.com. I should know that. I think it may just be Spare Room Films. We can put it in the description, can't we?
Yeah.
Hopefully, that will be correct. But yeah, I got the website. That's got all information on like movies, upcoming projects, trailers, bios, stuff like that.
Now, if somebody wanted to get involved or reach out to you, what's the best place? Is it X or on YouTube?
Yeah, so probably YouTube. Comment on a video there is probably the best way to do it. You could also, I do have a business email, which is spareroomfilmsproductions@gmail. You can send anything there. Might not get to it, might go to spam, but that's probably YouTube's the best way to do it.
Nice.
But yeah, so if you want to help out, there's also, you could always buy merch and stuff from shop.spreadshirt.com/SimonsRants. I think that's correct. Haven't said that in a while. That's a good way, or Patreon or whatever. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you for coming on again.
Thank
I'm glad
you.
We got to talk about some more things.
Yeah.
And go out and watch it. Go watch it.
Amazon
no
or
excuse
Fossum, whatever. Yeah.
And let them know what you think. So,
Yeah.
all right, dude. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. This was
a pleasure.
Fun. Yeah.
And thank you guys for sticking around and hanging out with us.
I didn't use any of this.
Yeah, I guess we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Bye.